Of course. Of course they fall to the Toronto Raptors 116 to 115 in overtime, and there's plenty to break down, Keith Pompey, with this 76ers loss, dropping game one of the back-to-back. All that will break down and more on this edition of Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we do thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network out there. Keith Pompey, Marc Farzetta. Keith, we're going to break down what the hell happened at the end of that game. Also, how that game started with just, let's just say it wasn't exactly a shooting clinic for all the young players out there. We'll also talk about the turnovers, the lack of assists from the 76ers, and possibly getting revenge with hopefully a healthier lineup in game two of this back-to-back north of the border against Toronto. But before we say anything, Keith, I do want to get this out of the way because I'm all about keeping it 100, my friend, all about keeping it real. I was on double duty tonight, obviously Sixers coverage and Eagles coverage. So I know you watched every play of the Sixers game, post-game press conference, all that. So I'm going to defer everything to you on this. But what I did pick up from this one, really rough start. Defensively, really rough ending. Couple of would-be opportunities to put the game on ice there by the Sixers. Couple of bad reviews. It ends with the Sixers with a 1-point loss to the Toronto Raptors, unfortunately. So, Keith, I'll defer to you. What the hell happened?
Man, what had happened was like, no, I'm playing. Nah, so dude, it was crazy. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. So initially, you know, I'm up here like thinking because I got to do these takeaways. I'm like, man, what's the takeaway? Wow, the 76ers really missed Joel Embiid and Paul George. Like it's like they were lost without him. But then in the third quarter, they came back, man. They came on fire. And you're like, okay, this is the Sixers. And then the fourth quarter starts, and it was just like how they used to do in the third. Like they just fell totally apart. However, Tyrese Maxey took over a little bit. He had like 38 points. The thing about Maxey is what he did is Maxey like hit a three that put him up 107 to 103 with like 20 seconds left. It looked like the dagger three-pointer, right? Mm-hmm. You're saying to yourself, the 76ers are going to win this game. They're going to win this game, Mark. And then all of a sudden, they try to inbounds the ball. Kelly Oubre throws the ball to VJ Edgecombe. VJ, like, you know, grabs it. The guy hits it. It goes off of VJ's hand. It looked like VJ was fouled. He could have been flopping a little bit. So anyway, Toronto looks at it and sees, oh, no, foul was called. Let's try to, see if we can get this thing, corrected. Next thing you know, it goes off on the Sixers. Then Toronto comes down and score. The same thing again. Then another call. They go and they go and review it. Toronto gets the ball. They score again. So you're looking at it. It goes into overtime, and you're saying to yourself, hold up. You guys go down there. You can't inbounds the ball. They come down, they get 2 easy buckets, and then next thing you know, the game goes to overtime. And then all of a sudden, the 76ers are up 112 to 108 in overtime. And then you look at it and you're like, okay, they got this 1-1. Well, they can't stop ball penetration again. So then it's like Toronto goes on a 7-0 run. And then the end of the game. Now, mind you, everybody's trying to get the ball, get the reviews, right? The Sixers tried and they lost it. So then what happens is on the final play, Scotty Barnes is driving the lane. He grabs Kelly Oubre's arm. It looked like it. Kelly then puts his hand on Scotty Barnes' arm, and then the refs call foul. Well, everyone looks at it, and you can see that Scotty Barnes was an offensive foul, but Nick Nurse ran out of the reviews. They lost it. They couldn't do it. It was nothing the refs could do. So Barnes is 0.8 left. Barnes hits the first free throw, and then he intentionally misses the second one, and ball game. That's how it ended. It was bad, bro.
With this, so from what I gathered after the game and watching some of the highlights at the end of the game there, at the regulation and overtime, it looked like there was enough offensively to do the dagger, right? Especially without Joel Embiid, especially without Paul George. Seeing Tyrese Maxey turn it on late, 38 points that you mentioned. But defensively speaking, there were breakdowns. And when you talk about not being able to inbounds the basketball, that sounds like breakdown in coaching as well.
It could have been, but at the same time, I think that it was kind of like I think they needed to be a little bit more aggressive. Now, Kelly said that somebody was telling him that VJ was open, and come to find out that he wasn't, right? So you can blame that on coaching, but the way that the ball went, it was kind of crazy. Like it was kind of like, I don't know if VJ was trying to flop to get a foul call or whatever. And it looked like the guy did hit him, but at the same time, it was bad. Now, there's two other things you can say. You can say that, the Sixers turned the ball over 22 times. The Sixers only made 8 of 31 threes, right? But even still, we can talk about all that. The 76ers still had opportunities to win the game in overtime and in regulation. And both times they could not close out the game. They couldn't do it at all. And, you look at Maxey, Maxey played a great game. You look at it, he had 38 points. But then it just seems like, in the overtime, he only made one basket. Now, he scored a 3 in overtime. VJ Edgecombe was 2 for 4 in the overtime. But, it was just one of those things where, I just think the 76, I'm not going to say they choked but it's just like the inability to close out games keeps biting them in the butt. And this one was just bad. It was just bad because they had so many opportunities to win this game.
Yeah, and we've talked about the Raptors obviously being a pretty damn good opponent for the 76ers, but in this particular game, Brandon Ingram still nursed an injury. They lose Jacoby Walter earlier in this game, who was a starter in this game for the Raptors. Sixers obviously didn't have Joel Embiid. They didn't have Paul George. They had Tyrese Maxey. They had just gotten back Kelly Oubre. You don't get a whole heck of a lot from Andre Drummond. Dembona ends up playing 34 minutes, 44 minutes, whatever it was, 34 minutes. He doesn't give you much either. 17 points by Edgecombe in total, and then 3 other guys have 13. That kind of explains the offensive inefficiency, especially in the early goings of the game. But as the game went on, it seemed like they just continued to rely on Maxey. But on the defensive end of things, that's where they came up small.
Yeah, kind of. Kelly Oubre stepped up for him, though. In the third quarter, Kelly Oubre scored 9 of the points. Now, here's the problem. Like, to be honest with you, it looked like in the first half that they really missed Joel Embiid and Paul George. It looked like that. Now, they were able to overcome that when they regained the lead. But, you look at it and you start seeing guys who got used to being role players, right? To now it's time for you guys to step up and see what you can do. And also what they did was, since PG and Embiid wasn't out there, Scotty Barnes in the first half, Scotty Barnes ended up with 31, but he did most of his damage in the first half and then late in the game, right? After that, they kind of had him figure out. But what happened is, it was one of those things where when you miss Paul George's, Paul George 6'8", 6'9", Scotty Barnes 6'8", the Sixers really didn't have anybody initially who could guard him. And he was just getting in their lane. He was just, driving, getting 20 points, getting these assists. He had 20 points and 6 assists in the first half. He was just getting to spots, doing whatever he wanted to do, right? Now, also what they were doing was they were applying a lot of pressure defense on Maxey, D'ing him up, and also D'ing up VJ Edgecombe. VJ Edgecombe didn't really have one of his better games. Like, he did some other things, but offensively, he struggled a little bit. Now, he did hit a huge 3 in overtime, but he was struggling a little bit. But again, it was just like they didn't really have anybody else step up on the offensive end until Kelly Oubre started doing stuff in the third quarter. Then VJ started doing it, not VJ, Quentin started doing some things and this and that. But they missed him. And then Maxey, he took over a little bit and started playing well. But again, you can't really. The loss is two things. The loss came down to not being able to close out the game, and the second thing is here's something else that always happens to the Sixers. How many times have we seen opposing guards just drive straight down the lane and they either take their layups or kick the ball out? Well, that's what they were doing in Toronto. And then late in the game, when the Sixers would come in and double, as soon as they would double, they would dish the ball to the centers, and they was getting dunks, like wide open dunks on the Sixers. That's how the game essentially ended. That's how they got back into the game. And ended because the Maxey and VJ need to do a better job of keeping these guys in front of them, and they just couldn't do that. They couldn't do it tonight. They couldn't do it at all.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about those turnovers. We'll also talk about a season low in another statistical category as well. That's when we return. This is Locked On 76ers and the Locked On Sixers YouTube channel. Back after this. And right now, I'm going to tell you about FanDuel and how incredible FanDuel is. Hopefully, you guys are having a great time on FanDuel, and especially on Fridays. Fridays already feel different during the basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night, before the game tips off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with the FanDuel NBA Happy Hour on the FanDuel app. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action tips off. Fridays from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new, whether it's a boost, whether it's a bonus, or whether it's a surprise. Timing is perfect right before the games tip off, right before the weekend gets underway. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping on NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A little basketball, whole lot of action, and a lot of Friday night energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And, of course, let's not forget about Everydayer Club. Locked On 76ers, we do thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day, part of the #1 podcast network out there, Locked On Podcast Network. And if you haven't already, check out LockedOn76ers.supercast.com. That's LockedOn76ers.supercast.com for the access to a ad-free audio feed of Locked On 76ers, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every major podcast application. Once again, thank you for checking out Locked On 76ers. Go to LockedOn76ers.supercast.com to check it out for an ad-free version of Locked On 76ers. Is it as simple as still no point guard, still not having even PG to run that point forward spot? Is it as simple to look at that when you talk about turnovers and then also talk about only 11 assists, which is actually a season low? 22 turnovers, one off the season high. 11 assists, a season low tonight, Keith.
It's crazy. I mean, yes and no, but I feel like it's weird because the 76ers get in these stretches, right? And they get in these stretches to where there's certain games that come out and you just say there's no ball movement, right? Guys are, I'm not saying playing hero ball, but it's a little bit of panic ball. Like, okay, let's get this shot up. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then when they were trying to do things with the ball, they were either like just senseless turnovers or errant passes, right? So, yeah, they benefit for having a point guard that's going to settle them down and get everybody in some actions, yeah. But I just looked at it as if it was one of those things where guys were just getting caught up and just trying to will their team to win. Now, it looked bad, though, because at one point, I believe in the first half, they had something like, I want to say like 9 turnovers and like 6 assists. And you can't win like that, man. Like, you just can't. And then it ended up being, 22-11? Like, you just can't do that. So which means is they had, it was worse in the second half, right? or after in intermission. But then you really can't say that because they have the overtime too.
Mm-hmm.
But you get the drift. It's kind of like, yeah, it's easy to say you need a point guard, but also you need people to stop getting caught up in the moment. And I felt like they did. There were certain guys like, I know VJ has been playing well, and some people are going to look at the box score,
right?
And they're going to say, oh, he played well, but to me, he really didn't. He was 6 for 19 shooting. He was 2 for 8 on threes. I get it. He had 4 rebounds. He had 4 assists. He had 2 steals, but it was just, they were just a little careless with the ball, a lot of them. And so, yeah, I guess you could say they could use a point guard. But, dude, I'm just saying, it just seemed like there wasn't a lot of ball movement at all.
So here's my question on VJ. Struggling-wise, 2 games now, I believe it's been in a row where he has struggled from the floor. Now, he had the second most points on the team, as I mentioned earlier, 17 points. You mentioned the struggle shooting. When it comes to that, that's going to happen. There's going to be ebbs and flows with a rookie in terms of being on, being off, and all that stuff. But in terms of VJ Edgecombe, development as a ball handler is one thing I want to see him continue this season. And then something else is out of his control. Are we going to get to a point eventually where some of the hype around his rookie season actually gets some respect from the officials? And I'm not blaming it tonight by any means. Yeah. But I'm just saying it seems like he's really, like, even more so than what you're used to seeing from a rookie, it seems like he's really got to get mauled to get a call.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think he should have. Now, again, he did go flying a little bit, but I do think, and maybe the official thought he was acting because of that. But on that ball where he knocked the ball out, it did look like he got fouled, and I think he should get it. But yeah, it comes a point where you do think that they need to get more calls. Now I'm gonna say this honestly. That's one thing that Toronto did do, and Toronto did this the last time they played the Sixers. They were extremely physical with them, and the refs allowed them to play physical. And I felt like the last time that Toronto played the Sixers, not this game, but the game before that, they were like, it was kind of like Detroit was extremely physical with the Sixers, and Toronto was the second team of all teams that brought that physicality. And they did the same thing last night or tonight. So, you know what I mean? So VJ and them, they're not getting the calls. Now, here's the problem too, though. From the beginning of the game, they were yelling, they were arguing with the officials. The bench even got a technical early in the game over a call, talking about the Sixers. And then there was times where Maxey was following around the officials, trying to see what's going on. Nick Nurse was doing it too. So I think, like, sometimes, like, when you complain a lot like that, it's kind of like the little boy that cried wolf. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what you doing, bro? Like, after a while, it becomes annoying to the refs. It's more or less noise. Like, it's kind of like the one time when Nick Nurse was calling the timeout and the ref was right there and he, like, basically ignored him. Like, yeah, okay, this dude is probably yelling about something else. We ain't worrying about it. We got to get out of here.
You're talking about earlier in the season, right?
Yeah, like earlier in the season. Remember? Like that one time.
The official, the assistant, and Nick Nurse were both practically running on the court.
Yeah, and they're like, yo, what are they doing? Like, not knowing that they're calling the timeout. Like, yo, what are they doing again? Like, what are they doing again? So like, to me, it was like one of those things where they were arguing, trying to get calls. They didn't get them. But it's like to a point where, you just got to run through that stuff. I mean, but they were extremely physical with the Sixers. I have to say that.
All right, we'll see if help is on the way. We'll break that down when we return. This is Locked On 76ers and the Locked On Sixers YouTube channel. Back after this. Now it's time to tell you about the Game Time app. Holidays are over. Now it's time to think about you. You want to go to a game? You want to go to a concert? You want to go to a comedy show? Game Time app is where it's at. If you want to go to a basketball game, Game Time is where it's at. Nothing like being in the building with all that energy going on, that buzz in the air. Game Time has got you covered when it comes to that. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets, fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Browsing the Game Time app is a straightforward and intuitive way to get tickets easily with just a few taps. Seeing the view from your seat, by the way, before you purchase the seat takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Prices include fees up front, so you know what the total is before you go to check out. So again, you're literally taking the guesswork out of buying tickets, and their zone deals are a fantastic way to unlock great seats at even better value. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNBA. That's promo code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today and get in on the action with the Game Time app. Keith Pompey, Marc Farzetta with you here, Locked On 76ers. Here's the question everyone wants to know. We kind of predicted, Keith, a little bit of a pattern on this road trip. You might have 76ers have their full roster in game one. They did. Game two, most likely, not so much. Game three, the second game of the back-to-back here against the Raptors. That's the question. Joel Embiid and PG going to be up for game three?
You know, that's the main question. Like, you know, you would think. Now, it's weird because when Embiid initially went out, right, at first, you know, when we saw Embiid listed as questionable on the injury report and Paul George was listed as in, you know, he wasn't on injury report, you said to myself, okay, I'm waiting for Joel Embiid to either basically be scratched or, you know, I don't know what's going on, or maybe he's going to play in both games, right? Because you know there's not going to, you figured something was going to happen. So then all of a sudden when he was out, you're like, okay, that's cool. PG's going to play tonight and Embiid will play tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, Paul George was a late scratch. I'm talking about right before the game. So when you hear that, you're like, wow. So with that being said, I don't know about Paul George. I don't. I assume Embiid's going to play tomorrow, and I assume that this was always the plan, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? I assume this was always playing. Now, the one thing they're saying is he got a left groin, so that's a little concerning if it's severe or not. But at the same time, I think Embiid's going to play tomorrow. I'm up in the air with Paul George. You know what I mean? Unless they felt like, don't worry about it. We just give you an extra day rest. We still think that we could beat this team without you two because they got three guys out. But
right. The Raptors have three guys out.
Yeah, the Raptors, but they
ended up being four. Yeah.
Ended up being four. So, I mean, that's the $1 million question. But I do expect Embiid to play tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. So here's my only thing with Embiid. The knee injury, obviously left knee management. We all know about that. And then we're talking about left groin has popped up there as well.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I mean, just like they said last time where it was his ankle. You know what I mean? So, right. You know what I mean? That's the only thing, you know, we'll figure out more tomorrow how severe it is. But, you know, I don't know, dude. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing, and I'm going to stress this again. When Joel Embiid has an injury issue, just take a break. Just shut it down for as long as you need to shut it down. And if you could get back to that level, and I think he's playing tomorrow night. I'm not overly concerned about this. But when it does come to Joel Embiid, it is a matter of whenever he has that little twinge or whatever it might be, that little tweak. Okay, take your time. I didn't expect him to play in the back-to-back. You didn't expect – nobody really expected him to play in the back-to-back anyway. We both thought he was going to miss game one, come back in game two. I still think that's going to be the case. Now, the other part of this is Paul George, the guy that prides himself on being a chameleon for this team. I think he was starting to find a way with this squad as well. And while VJ is going through another shooting lull, I'll call it that, it's nice to have Paul George, especially when it seemed like he was finally finding a stroke from beyond the arc.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. You find, and not only that, somebody who can defend Scotty Barnes, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
It just looked like, here's the problem out there defensively. Drummond looked like a little bit too slow. Like it was like he was in quicksand on a rotation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boner was was jumping every time. Like, you know what I mean? Like they were pump faking him and he was woo. He looked like jumping Jack Flash out that mug. Like one time, I was like, yo, one time I thought he got hurt. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was just like, yo, player, like stay on the ground. So they missed Embiid and they also missed Paul George. Like, so they need those two guys to come back. Because if not, I can see Scotty Barnes coming back if he plays tomorrow with another 30-point game if these two guys don't play. I can see it happening.
Well, they'll be right back at it tomorrow night at 7:30, hopefully with a little revenge game. I'll cross my fingers for that one. Keith Pompey, Marc Farzetta, we appreciate you guys joining us for a live evening version of Locked On 76ers. We will not be doing the show live tomorrow. Unfortunately, I had a death in the family, and I have to tend to that. Funerals tomorrow. So, Keith, I appreciate your flexibility. Those joining us now, appreciate your flexibility as well. This show, of course, is live right now, so you can enjoy it again tomorrow for those that want to at our normal time at 10 o'clock. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And don't forget, Locked On 76ers. We appreciate you guys for making Locked On 76ers part of your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And once again, make sure you check out the Everydayer Club. Just go to lockedon76ers.supercast.com. That's lockedon76ers.supercast.com. And you can get an ad-free version of Locked On 76ers. Never miss an episode. Keith Pompey, your Inquirer beat writer for the 76ers. Marc Farzetta, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Back with you guys on Tuesday to break it all down. Hopefully a win in the second leg of the back-to-back. Catch you guys later. Bye.